The Equalities and Human Rights Committee is launching a new inquiry into racial inequality in Scotland. We know from evidence that people from ethnic minority communities still face poorer outcomes than the majority of the population, are more likely to experience in-work poverty and have lower rates of employment. The focus of our inquiry will be public authorities who have a legal obligation to address these matters. We'll look at what action they're taking and how successful that action is. The committee would like to hear from individuals, from community groups, from those providing employability courses, and of course public authorities themselves. To contribute to our work, please visit the link on our website.
So authorities are legally obligated to address these problems, and by that I can only assume she means anti-discrimination laws in regards to the hiring practices. Or maybe she means diversity quotas, who knows? Regardless of whether that's what she's referring to or if there's something I'm yet to come across, the point remains the same, however, that she said there's a legal obligation for these challenges to be addressed. But yet in spite of that, presumably no laws have been broken, and yet there's still a requirement for these authorities to explain what actions they've taken and how successful these actions have been. Because what they have done to date hasn't been enough to right the wrongs of the inequalities that plague the outcomes of ethnic minorities. Equality of opportunity is a thing of the past here in Rainbow Unicorn Land, it seems. Quality of outcome is where it's at. Disparities do not indicate inequality. Disparities do not indicate discrimination, nor racism. They're simply disparities. These people would come to that realisation themselves, considering the fact no laws have been broken, they're legally obligated to address these challenges, and in spite of all of that, there's still a problem, according to them. You'd think maybe then it'd be time to go back to the drawing board. Race equality, employment and skills. The committee is looking at issues relating to race equality, employment and skills in Scotland. We want to know what has been done in Scotland to make sure that people from minority ethnic communities have the same employment opportunities as everybody else. Hate to break it to you, they do. It's illegal to not hire somebody purely because of the colour of their skin, and or their religion, and or their gender. So, you would think that would be enough to put this matter to bed. But of course not, because these people are obsessed with preaching to the choir about social justice, beating Scotland down whenever they get the opportunity to, the country that they're supposed to represent. They can't help themselves but imply it's racist, the evil white man, and yet in spite of that they still want to open the borders and ethnically replace us, birth rate wise. You want to encourage people here, people of colour, over here. Yet we're a racist country. To thank the committee for inviting me to give evidence as part of the evidence gathering sessions on race equality. As I said at the meeting, I warmly welcome the committee's interest in our work to tackle racism and promote equality. Of course, because disparities by default indicates racism. Can't be anything else. I'm also pleased to hear that the committee intends to conduct an inquiry into race equality, employment and skills. As you know, the REAP programme board has made a decision to focus on minority ethnic employment over the next year. I would agree that this is an area which would benefit from increased focus. Never heard of it. This will be intriguing. If this is what I think they're referring to, positive discrimination, potentially, then we're already off to a bad start. How can you level a playing field that was already level? The minute you begin that process, you immediately make it unequal. I would also like to take this opportunity to inform the committee of a correction we have since we made the official report. At the meeting, I provided an update on the progress made regarding minority ethnic recruitment in the police service, suggesting an 11% ratio. However, I was later informed to the figures I originally presented, and this has been addressed by making the following amendment to the official report. We are talking about roughly 8% of the new police officer recruits in 2018 to 19, which is 1%, which is on par, with the Scottish population. Whilst we learn lessons to ensure we have no recurrence of such errors, we should not lose sight of the broader point that this figure still reflects good progress on the part of Police Scotland. we are talking about roughly 8%. So the percentage of ethnic minorities within Scotland has jumped up from 4% to 8% in the space of 10 years. Why is it that this group of people continues to increase year on year, and yet the Scottish people decrease year on year? Is it a case of importations being too high? Or are they simply outbreeding us? Anyway, the role of the delivery group is to oversee and drive the delivery of actions from the Race Equality Action Plan. Group members will act as senior responsible officers for actions that their directorate has committed to undertaking under the themes of the REAP. SROs will be responsible for tracking progress on all actions within their directorate, resolving any strategic issues or obstacles which need the input and agreement of senior colleagues or stakeholders, support the delivery of any cross-cutting action, and providing progress reports on action for the programme board. Membership will comprise a core group of SROs, with one for each directorate that is responsible for actions within the REAP as nominated by their director. Membership may be expanded to address new work through their lifetime of the action plan. Yada yada. Race Equality Action Plan Programme Board. The vision for the Programme Board is to advance race equality in Scotland by working in close partnership both within the government and across the wider public sector, and with other key mystery stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders? I really want to know who these fucking stakeholders are, pardon my French. They seem to be influencing a hell of a lot of the social justice related BS that's taking place behind the scenes here in Rainbow Unicorn Land. As part of this, a key role will be to ensure delivery on the 6 themes of the Race Equality Action Plan, part of the Race Equality Framework, taking every opportunity to accelerate progress, of course, and secure impact for people from ethnic minority communities. This will include a focus on tackling racism and addressing the barriers that don't exist that prevent people from realising their full potential. Of course, non-existent barriers. They're preventing people from realising their full potential. Yeah, that's right. It's the barriers and the racism, of course. We better fund some social justice third sector organisations then to come in and save the day. And how are you going to mitigate these issues? How are you going to right these wrongs? Well, the only thing I can think of is getting companies and organisations to prioritise ethnic minority hiring. That's about it, really. Providing senior level commitment and support with the delivery of the actions arising from the plan. Providing strategic direction and organisational context for embedding race equality into Scottish Government policies and practices. Oh great, more of this shit. Sharing learning and best practice to ensure activities focus on securing real impact and agreeing priorities and participating in high level assessments. An independent race equality advisor will sit on the board to help provide insight and context to how actions could impact the minority ethnic community. They will also give independent challenge to the delivery of programmes and projects within the action plan. Paul Johnson, Director General of Education, Communities and Justice, will chair the board, drawing on both his role as DG and as the executive team's Race Equality Champion. Race Equality Champion. Unbelievable cringe. Yada yada yada. What is this? Targets and timescales for Rainbow Unicorn's government as a public authority. Our corporate ambition is to be representative of the wider Scottish working age populace by 2025. This means that 5% of our workforce would identify as a visible ethnic minority. As at the end of September 2019, 2.8 of the SG Core directly employed staff who declared an ethnicity identified as being visible from a visible ethnic minority. We have set targets on the flow of minority ethnic people into senior civil service. That 4% of new entrants into the SCS should identify as visible minority ethnic individuals for the period of 2017 to 2020, rising to 6% by 2025. So as the years go on, the percentage gets higher. Why is that exactly? Given the relatively small numbers incoming to SCS in any given year, it's unlikely to be possible to give a year-on-year breakdown of me entrants, as this would significantly risk compromising individuals' anonymity. The data has been regularly scrutinised internally, and we will report in 2025 on whether we have met the target. And of course, if you haven't, that can indicate a plethora of reasons as to why, but we all know that won't cut it as far as you people are concerned. Data on minority ethnic employment is shocking. Minority ethnic people are doing better at school than their counterparts, but then doing much worse in the labour market. That's probably got something to do with the fact that if 60 people apply for the same job, and 59 of them happen to be white, and one of them is an ethnic minority, stands to reason that person has got a rather small chance of getting that job. But of course, so do the other 59 individuals, because it's not a block group versus that one particular person. But these people view the world in collectives. And when disparities appear, they imply it's racism. And the public sector workforce does not reflect the ethnic diversity of the communities we serve. Now, of course, this is just shit. Because currently as things stand, Scotland is majority white. But you people are complaining that certain sectors, or all sectors for that matter, are too white. So we have to put things in place to mitigate these issues. We have to get the anti-racist organisations involved to address the problems. Positive discrimination, etc., etc. And if this trend continued for years and years and years, and then white Scottish people become a minority in their own country, do you think the same treatment will be granted to them? That they deserve equal representation? Now, I know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to turn around and say, well, that's the joys of being a minority. Fucking unbelievable. The programme's board view, endorsed by the minister, is that if we improve minority ethnic employment, this will impact positively in a range of other outcomes. What, because one black guy gets a decent job, that means that the black community will be better off, will they? For tackling child poverty, these points were reinforced by the academics that gave evidence. Oh, well, got to take their word for it. The ones that claim that white people created the idea of race so they could run around the world and pretend that they were white. We're going to take their word for it. The academics, the anti-racists, the arseholes, the Jobsworths, the communists, the Bolsheviks. I really could go on, but what's the point? We created a dedicated team as part of the Fair Work Directorate to focus on improving representation of minority ethnic people in employment. Representation, yes, because black people working in Tesco's is an equal or a better representation of society at large. If we're going to go down that route, then, despite the fact Holyrood is majority white, there's not one person in that parliament that represents me. We're going to go down that route, because the assumption is, because it's majority white, that's the people of Scotland are represented. But they're not. And the same would be true about just shoving people into positions purely because of their religion or skin colour. That does not automatically mean that that community is then by default represented, unless of course you're planning to put people into these roles that go out of their way to represent said community, like a black nationalist, for example, or a Muslim that preaches to the choir about how wonderful his religion is. Whatever. Or a feminist, getting into a position of power to do nothing other than chat shit about how oppressed they are and do things that benefit women. We've created a dedicated team to focus on... Oh, sorry, I've read that. The increased capacity will enable them to progress and refine actions that can be tracked and measured. The programme board is spearheading a drive to improve employment opportunities and outcomes across the public sector in conjunction with Scottish Leaders Forum. We started to see improvements in diversity in our workplace sector workforce. The number of minority ethnic police officers recruited has increased from 18 to 68. Is that it? Jesus. Surely not. Within the Scottish Government, minority ethnic staff have increased from 1.6 to 2.8. Well, that's not good enough. That is racist. That's absolutely unacceptable. That is just not right. Where's the representation? Are the Scottish Government racist? No, I don't think so, of course not. The SG is developing a toolkit to support other public bodies. Oh, I can't wait for that one. The toolkit draws on practice already tried by public bodies that has taken account of cultural diversity. Oh, great. Of course it has. Is that the same toolkits that imply that only white people can be racist? Yes. The toolkit will initially focus on specific areas of recruitment and offer advice in relation to building capacity of recruiters. Tyrone's black. If you don't hire Tyrone, you're racist. Throughout the Scottish Leaders Forum, SG is developing a community of practice involving several public bodies to develop the toolkit further. I really can't wait. The community of practice has been asked to help develop and implement the toolkit. Oh my god, I'm getting really excited. Initial members of the community of practice include the Parliament's corporate body and Scottish social security agencies. Workplace Equality Fund was delivered for a second year through targeted support. The number of applicants and a number of successful applications related to supporting ME communities has increased. The Fair Work Employability and Skills Directorate is focusing on improving data around minority ethnic employment. And again, how are you going to improve minority ethnic employment unless, of course, you start going down the route of discriminating against other people? This includes the use of education data to understand possible factors affecting earnings of minority ethnic graduates. And the race employment gap has also been undertaken. A race employment gap? What a load of shit. Unbelievable. It reminds me of last year or 2 years ago now, when Theresa May came out with her minority ethnic pay gap. And it was talking about how all the minority ethnic communities and how they compared on average to their white counterparts. And after 2 minutes of digging, I stumbled across the average earnings yearly for all demographics broken down on the government's own website. And Asians, if I'm not mistaken, or Indians, were at the top. So surely it should have said, in comparison to their Indian counterparts, whites weren't even earning the highest. Anyway, this will be done through greater engagement in employment support services and wider stakeholder engagement to ensure services such as Fair Start Scotland are accessed by minority ethnic people. Of course, create a list or a chart of protected characteristics, and if somebody comes along and ticks one or two of the boxes, the more the better as far as they're concerned, then they by default need to be prioritised and shoved to the front of the queue for the best job going. Wow. This is the Scottish Government's guiding philosophy. Nicola Thin-Lips looking off into the sunset, concentrating very hard. I'm sure. I'll tell you what the guiding philosophy behind Nicola Thin-Lips' government is. It's the United Nations barking orders. Communism, essentially. Nothing more, nothing less.